What happened? Seriously, what actually has happened this season to the Minnesota Vikings? We're going to dive into it all in today's edition of Vikings Now by Chat Sports. My name is Patrick Siepman, and welcome in. And this season is truly stunning and at how bad it has been for this franchise, and specifically the quarterback position. And I want to start off with this stat because J.J. McCarthy, he is not entering, Josh Rosen territory. He's not entering, when Geno Smith and Sam Darnold were labeled as bust territory. He is entering Jamarcus Russell territory. Anthony Amico tweeting this out. J.J. McCarthy now ranks 851 out of 852 in EPA among qualified passers since 2000. The only player below J.J. McCarthy is Jamarcus Russell. There's a lot to unpack here. Not only one, how bad J.J. McCarthy has been playing this season and what a detriment that is to this football team, but also, do the Vikings stick with him for the rest of the year? What led to the decision to keep J.J. McCarthy as the starting quarterback heading into this season? Because you saw this guy every day in practice. No way they envisioned it being this bad. So there's a lot to dive into, but I think the one thing I can guarantee about this Vikings team, this offseason is going to be very hectic. There is no guarantees anymore. There's no guarantees that we're not looking for a new GM. Obviously, I think there's a very big chance that they're looking for a new quarterback. So if you guys have not hit that subscribe button just yet, subscribe to the channel. Going to be a crazy offseason. Appreciate all of you guys for tuning in today. But if you guys are new here, hit that subscribe button today. And listen, there's no doubt here about J.J. McCarthy. He is entering all-time bust territory with how he is playing. It's not just he's playing bad football. He is legit playing unplayable football right now. And it's starting to look bad to the rest of the guys on this roster because I can't imagine how J.J. McCarthy feels walking in that locker room, seeing guys like Christian Darrisaw, seeing guys like Jordan Addison, seeing this pretty much exact same team that a year ago just won 14 games, and he is the biggest piece of the blame pie is why this team is 4-7 this year, and the offense is legit looking like one of the worst offenses in the league with that much talent. What does JJ say to Justin Jefferson in the locker room? What does Kevin O'Connell say to Justin Jefferson? This is a guy in Justin Jefferson who is averaging 97 receiving yards per game in his NFL career, the highest of all time by about 9 yards. And now with J.J. McCarthy, he's averaging 50 yards per game. What do you say to these blue chippers on this team? What do you say to Christian Darrisaw? And I was completely wrong about JJ. You guys already know that. I can already imagine there's about 100 comments on this video yelling at me saying, oh, now you're flip-flopping on JJ. But even the biggest J.J. McCarthy hater did not see this coming. This is truly historically bad stuff we're seeing out of the quarterback position where the Vikings can't even run an offense. I also don't think J.J. McCarthy deserves 100% of the blame for what happened yesterday against the Green Bay Packers. The offensive line was getting killed. Kevin O'Connell had some really questionable play calling in certain spots. But when you are the quarterback, the most important position in all of sports, that's the product you're putting out there. You should get most of the blame. So I just can't imagine what he is saying to the guys in the locker room or how he is feeling about himself. How do you not just lose confidence naturally? And I always think back to this moment. When Sam Darnold beat the Green Bay Packers in Week 17 last season, and his teammates were hoisting him up, Kevin O'Connell was sitting there on the back wall. He was staring. He had a smile on his face. And I'm sitting there, and I'm going to bed that night. I'm like, dude, the Minnesota Vikings are 14-2. The Minnesota Vikings were 14-2. I could not believe it. We had a Week 18 game against our division rivals, the Detroit Lions, for the number 1 seed in the entire NFC. They're 4-9 since this moment. And they have gotten the worst quarterback play in the entire National Football League. Shout out to Janik on Twitter for tweeting this out. This is actually historically bad. In terms of total EPA for the Vikings' last 13 games, where this football team is 4-9, here are the best quarterback performances. You have 4 from Wentz. You have JJ Week 1 against the Bears, already in the negative at the 5th, game. And JJ's game against the Ravens when he was awful is his 6th best according to the EPA. Against the Lions when he won, minus 5.9, but this is when it gets really bad here. Wentz against the Chargers, minus 9.5. McCarthy, second game against the Bears, minus 12.4. McCarthy yesterday, minus 16.9. McCarthy against the Falcons, minus 19.9. But even as bad as JJ's been, it wasn't as bad compared to Darnold against the Lions and the Rams, which is so frustrating for this team. And the most concerning part about all of this with J.J. McCarthy, is the process of this decision. Because you saw this guy every day in practice, and you didn't think even a second that or have any doubts about him being the guy. That's what makes me question, like, did ownership step in here? Like, did the Wolves come down and say, hey, we spent the 10th overall pick on this guy. You guys need to start him. I don't care about Sam Darnold. I don't care about Daniel Jones. I think there's a possibility that ownership stepped in. But also, I think the most likely option here is I think Kevin O'Connell's ego stepped in. And he was coming off the Coach of the Year award. Everybody was saying, oh, KOC, he's the reason Sam Darnold turned his career around. What is Sam Darnold doing this year? He's 8-3, and he's looking like a legit top 10 quarterback in the league, entering his physical prime at 28 years old. So I'm sure Kevin O'Connell was probably saying to the ownership, to GM Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, saying, man, look what I just did with Sam Darnold. You let me get my hands on a 22-year-old quarterback and J.J. McCarthy. Watch what we're going to do. Let's go build a stacked roster around him. I can do it. I can fix any quarterback out there. It hasn't been the case. And it's also concerning because, listen, you saw J.J. McCarthy every day at practice. I can't imagine that there is such a difference on the practice field where you see him 4 or 5 times a week to the product we're getting out there on Sunday. Now, there's also a possibility that J.J. McCarthy has just gotten so much worse because when you are that young and you are a 22-year-old quarterback stepping into a team who they viewed themselves, like this Vikings team, guys, we viewed this team as a Super Bowl contender. It wasn't just me. It was ownership. They spent $350 million on this team this season, which is the most by any team in the NFL. So clearly they view this as an all-in year, and they view J.J. McCarthy as a guy that could get them there. So did J.J. get that much worse? I mean, maybe that's a possibility. But also, why didn't you bring in a backup quarterback? J.J. was 22 years old coming off a torn meniscus. You had Joe Flacco out there, Gardner Minshew, Jacoby Brissett. Instead, you traded for Sam Howell on draft night. Then you traded away Sam Howell a week before the season and signed Carson Wentz. Wentz is terrible. I feel bad for Wentz. He was getting his ass handed to him out there when he was playing with the Vikings. And you know why you didn't sign a backup quarterback? Because of a comp pick. Kwesi, you're going to get that 5th-round comp pick now. That's going to feel great when we're doing mock drafts here. Honestly, probably next week we might do a mock draft with how the season is going. It is organizational malpractice, how they handle this quarterback position, how they handle this offseason. And I think it was truly the worst offseason in Vikings franchise history. We'll talk about the offseason. We'll talk about our GM here in a second. But you guys, let me know your thoughts here. Is it over for J.J. McCarthy? Give me a Y for yes. Give me an N for no. I have nothing to go off of to say it's not over. But it might be. And that is just so sad. It's so sad. But you guys, let me know your thoughts. Is it over for J.J. McCarthy? Y for yes, N for no. Now, coming up here in just a second. I think this starts at the top. I think it starts with the GM, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. And I said this 2 months ago that he should be fired the day after the season. But I really want to dive into it because this is truly one of the worst off seasons in Vikings franchise history. So we'll talk about that here in a second. But before we do so, I do want to give a massive shout out to today's presenting sponsor, and that is Prize Picks. It is the holiday season, the best time of year for sports. Bowl games, basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It is all happening at once. And while you and I are out here making decisions every day, what gifts to buy, what to eat, which game to watch, there's only one place where it feels good to be right, and that is Prize Picks. Now, with the Vikings season being all said but done, Prize Picks will make the viewing experience so much better for every single Vikings game this season. You guys can take more on J.J. McCarthy's pass yards, Justin Jefferson's receiving yards. Just make the game very much more enjoyable since the Vikings season is pretty much all but over. But also, my fantasy football team is absolutely cooked as well. But with Prize Picks, I don't have to wait until next year's draft. Prize Picks lets you play fantasy football every week, pick your favorite players, and win when they hit their projections every week. No draft is required. So download the Prize Picks app today and plug in that promo code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Shout out to Prize Picks for sponsoring today's show. Prize Picks, it is good to be right. All right, let's talk about Kwesi Adofo-Mensah here because it is very likely that the Vikings will have a top 10 pick heading into this year's NFL draft because right now you're slated in to have the 12th overall pick, but you're in Seattle. You still got 2 more games against the Packers and the Lions. You still got to go on the road to play the Cowboys. You got to go on the road to play the Giants. you're really only gimme game, and the Vikings don't have a gimme game with how bad the quarterback play is right now. Is the Commanders at home, but I think it's very, very much on the table. The Vikings either win 5 or 6 games. So if you have a top 10 pick, you cannot let Kwesi control another draft because he has been the worst drafting GM in the NFL. His best pick, legitimately, is this guy, Will Reichard, and Will Reichard's awesome. It's not a disrespect to number 16, Will the Throw, whatsoever. But when your best pick is a kicker in the 6th round, you're obviously not doing something right. Yes, now some of his UDFA signings have been great. He made some good signings in free agency a couple of off seasons ago. But you really look at all of his drafts, like especially if J.J. McCarthy is as big as a bust, if it's looking right now, plus Dallas Turner, like that 2024 draft, 2 misses. Like, yes, you want to give him credit for Jordan Addison, taking him in the 1st round. I think you kind of walked into that Addison pick. You were going to pick a wide receiver, and you had to choose between Addison, JSN, and Zay Flowers. Like, you weren't going to mess that one up. And you have never had any production out of a day 2 or day 3 pick. I just don't think you can let him control another draft. And also, talk about some free agency bust from this past season. I mean, Javon Hargrave, Jonathan Allen, these guys are flat out terrible. And if it wasn't because of the breakout from Jalen Redmond, we are probably talking about the Vikings having one of the worst interior defensive lines in the league. Like, these two should be thanking Jalen Redmond every single day because these guys get their ass blown off the ball. They look like they're out of shape. They're overpaid. They're not playing good football. Now, at least the Vikings can hang their hat on 61, hopefully being back there next year, but he's going to want to get paid. Like Jalen Redmond, I mean, they had it on the broadcast yesterday. Greg Olsen was saying when people are asking the Vikings about who their best player is defensively, they all say Jalen Redmond. When other coaches are talking about the Vikings defense, they're all saying Jalen Redmond. The guy's had an unreal year, but he's going to probably want to get paid. And you just paid 2 washed-up defensive tackles this past cycle a boatload of money. The decision to let Daniil Hunter walk for Jonathan Gennard. I love Jonathan Gennard. You're not Daniil Hunter. Blake Cashman, he's been fine. He's been awful the last couple of weeks. Andrew Van Ginkel, he's the one signing where you can kind of hang your hat on, but the Byron Murphy extension's terrible. Harrison Smith's getting $15 million. Harrison Smith should be in a retirement home. He cannot play football anymore. I feel bad for Harry the Hitman. He is that slow. The only thing is, though, as a Vikings fan that I can look forward to is this offseason is legitimately going to be insane. I don't know what's going to happen because obviously you have a huge question mark around the quarterback position, but you also have a question mark around the GM search. Are you going to try to get a new guy in there? But I think there's a very, very much a possibility the Vikings try to trade up to number 1. And I think this could be like an all-in move from the front office, like Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell, like all of them saying like, all right, we took a huge swing and a miss on J.J. McCarthy. We have to take another one and try to get maybe Fernando Mendoza or one of these guys. But to kind of close it out here, I am still absolutely stunned. Like, with how bad this season has gone, like, listen, I knew there was a chance that the Vikings weren't going to be good this year. Like, you were asking a lot of J.J. McCarthy, just natural turnover luck in the NFL. You Vikings had a tougher schedule. I'm not completely, blown away by the fact that the Vikings are 4-7, but I am stunned with how it has looked. Like, they legitimately, they're getting the worst quarterback play of possibly all time right now. Not even J.J. McCarthy's biggest hater, again, could have predicted that, and it's just unfortunate. But we'll have another video coming out later today and throughout the week, so appreciate all of you guys for tuning in. But if you guys made it to the end of today's show, hit me with a skull down below in the comment section. We'll get on out of here. As always, Skol Vikes.